The day Queen Ify went into labor, something very strange and unsettling happened in the kingdom of Idumo. It was still afternoon, but suddenly the sky grew dark as night. Thick clouds covered the sun and a great storm began to brew. Lightning flashed across the sky, followed by thunder so loud that it seemed to shake the very earth. Once upon a time, in a beautiful and peaceful kingdom called Idumo, there lived a very great and noble king. The king was not only powerful, but also incredibly kind. His kindness spread throughout the entire kingdom, making everyone love him dearly. The king had a special way of caring for his people, always listening to their problems and helping them find solutions. His heart was so big and full of love for everyone, from the smallest child to the oldest grandparents. The king was also very wise. His wisdom was like a bright light that people could see from far away. Because of this, people from distant lands would travel many days and nights just to come and ask for his advice. They knew that the king's words were full of knowledge and would help them make the best decisions. He was married to a very beautiful woman, Queen Chebe. The queen, after many long years of waiting, became pregnant and gave birth to a bouncing baby boy. The king was overjoyed when the news reached the palace. He rushed to the queen's side to see his newborn son. The baby was perfect in every way, and as soon as the king saw him, he fell in love with the little boy. The baby looked so much like the king, and it made the king's heart swell with pride and happiness. The king decided to name his son Nwakanaya, which means a son greater than his father. He chose this name because he believed that his son would grow up to even be greater and wiser than he was. From that day on, the king, the queen, and all the people of Idumo loved and cherished little Nwakanaya, knowing he would bring even more joy and wisdom to their wonderful kingdom. As Nwakanaya grew, the king's love for his son blossomed even more. The king made sure that Nwakanaya had everything he needed and wanted, showering him with love and attention. The young prince was blessed with incredible strength. His strength was unmatched, and none of his friends or playmates could ever defeat him in any game or challenge. From the age of 7, Nwakanaya would often be seen in the wide grassy fields of the kingdom, practicing with a wooden sword. He swung the sword with such skill and power, and it looked as if he were fighting invincible enemies. His movements were swift and precise, showing a natural talent that amazed everyone who saw him. The king had watched Nwakanaya many times, quietly observing his son from a distance. He noticed how serious and dedicated Nwakanaya was about his practice. As Nwakanaya grew older, his strength and skill increased. The king realized that his son was not just a playful child pretending to be a warrior. He was a born warrior, destined for greatness and endowed with strength to protect his people. Recognizing Nwakanaya's potential, the king decided to take action. He called upon his chief warrior, the greatest fighter in all of Idumo, and commanded him to train Nwakanaya. The chief warrior was a wise and experienced man who had fought many battles and protected the kingdom for many years. He agreed to train the young prince, seeing the same promise in Nwakanaya that the king did. Under the chief warrior's guidance, Nwakanaya began to develop his fighting skills. He learned how to wield a real sword, how to defend himself, and how to fight with honor and courage. Day by day, he became stronger and more skilled, impressing everyone with his determination and hard work. The people of Idumo watched with pride as their young prince grew into a mighty warrior. As the years flew by and Nwakanaya grew older, many things about him began to change. This once beloved boy, who was adored by his father and the people of Idumo, started to become a terror to the kingdom. The sweet and kind-hearted child turned into a bully, picking on people for no reason at all. He had no respect for the elders, ignoring their wisdom and guidance. His heart became so hardened that he showed no mercy to anyone, not even the most helpless. Nwakanaya's strength, which had once been a source of pride, now became a source of fear. He was so strong that no one could defeat him in a fight. His friends and playmates, who used to admire and look up to him, now feared and avoided him. The people of Idumo whispered about him in hushed tones, hoping not to attract his wrath. The king was deeply troubled. This was his only son, the one who was supposed to take over the throne and lead the kingdom with wisdom and kindness. But Nwakanaya's character had become something he could not be proud of. The king spent many sleepless nights, worried about the future of his beloved kingdom. He could not understand how his son, who had been raised with so much love and care, had turned into someone so cruel and heartless. Despite his disappointments, the king never gave up on his son. He continued to love Nwakanaya and hoped that he would change. Every day, the king prayed fervently, asking for guidance and strength. He prayed that Nwakanaya's heart would turn and soften, that he would remember the values he was taught as a child, and that he would realize the pain he was causing to the people who once admired him. When Nwakanaya turned 18, something extraordinary happened. He decided to join the warriors of Idumo and go to war. This was the first time in the kingdom's history that someone from the royal family chose to fight in battles. The people were amazed and curious to see how the young prince would fare. Nwakanaya's strength was unlike anything anyone had seen before. It seemed as if the gods themselves were fighting alongside him whenever he entered the battlefield. His bravery and power quickly became legendary. Every time he fought, the warriors of Idumo felt invincible. Nwakanaya led them to victory after victory, defeating enemies who had once terrified the kingdom. The surrounding kingdoms, which had previously threatened Idumo, began to withdraw in fear. They knew that facing Nwakanaya and his warriors meant destruction. It wasn't long before total peace was restored to Idumo. The kingdom, once plagued by fear and conflict, now enjoyed a period of calm and prosperity. The people, both men and women, greatly feared and respected the prince. They marveled at his incredible strength and unmatched bravery. Nwakanaya had become a hero in their eyes, someone who had brought peace and safety to their land. The king watched his son with a mixture of pride and concern. He was happy that Nwakanaya had become such a powerful and respected warrior. However, his son's attitude troubled him deeply. The king had hoped that as Nwakanaya grew older, he would outgrow his arrogant behavior. But instead, as Nwakanaya's fame and power increased, his arrogance grew worse. Nwakanaya committed so much atrocities. He raped so many maidens in the kingdom. Once any maiden catches his attention, he would send for her, and if she dare refuses to do his bidding, he would force her into his bed. He felt he was entitled to get anything he wanted. And married women were not left out. He did with them as he wished. And if any of their husbands confronted him, he would kill him immediately. Nwakanaya, with his power and authority, raised warriors that were loyal to him. At night, he would take these warriors and invade a kingdom, take all their possessions and kill anyone that stood on their way. He was heartless and had no human feelings at all. The king tried so many times to stop him, but Nwakanaya was unstoppable. He listened to no one, not even if that person was his own father. Every day, people would troop into the palace, crying and laying their complaints of what the prince had done to them. Nwakanaya brought grief and sadness to his parents and the entire kingdom at large. The king wondered how such a bad seed came into his family. It hurt him so much that he didn't have another son. Nwakanaya seemed to be that iron that refused to be bended. Nwakanaya continued with his evil lifestyle. One day, he invaded a kingdom with his men as usual. As they were robbing different huts, they came across a pregnant woman and her husband. She was almost due for delivery as she looked very heavy. This woman, Nwakego, had been married for over 8 years, and since then, she had been seeking for a child. Finally, the gods heard her and blessed her with this child. The woman looked so beautiful, even with her pregnancy, that Nwakanaya looked at her lustfully. Right there before her husband, he threw her on the bed and raped her, while he instructed that the husband watch them. Nwakego's husband could not stand the sight. The pleading cry from his wife filled his eyes with tears as he watched them. He tried to fight back, but he couldn't. Nwakanaya's men held him back as he cried in pain, watching his wife being defiled so ruthlessly. After Nwakanaya had raped the woman, he ordered that her husband be killed, and then they dug a hole in front of the hut and buried the pregnant woman and her baby alive. As they were covering the hole, the woman cried and pleaded, but Nwakanaya's heart was as dark as the devil's. It gave him great joy to inflict pain on people. He amassed so much wealth from the great treasures he had stolen from different kingdoms, and then he felt he had arrived. He called the elders together to feast and dine with him, and gave them a huge amount of money. The elders were so excited. They hadn't received this huge amount of money before. The prince told them that he was rewarding them for their hard work. But one of them, Mazi Okoye, refused to eat anything or take the money. He knew the prince so well and also knew that he was up to no good. The prince was plotting an evil scheme, and he knew that Mazi Okoye was going to stand his way. He ordered his men to make him disappear so he would be able to successfully carry out his treacherous plans. A few weeks later, when he was sure that they would have spent the money that he had given to them, he called them together and made his plans known to them. He told them that he wanted them to dethrone his father and make him the king. This hit the elders as a shock. They all looked at each other. They never expected to hear this from the prince. "You mean we should dethrone your father and make you the king?" one of the elders were asked. "How are we going to do this?" "I have no idea," Nwakanaya said. "You have 48 hours to come up with an idea or you refund me my money." The elders were placed in a tight position. They all stared at each other in confusion. What are we going to do? They asked themselves. I have finished all the money that was given to me. I don't even know how to get it back, one of them said. This boy is a bad son. What has our king done to deserve this? To Fiakwa, they spat, as they all sat down looking confused. They went back home, not concluding anything. They couldn't believe that the prince's wickedness could extend to his own father. They were all thrown in a tight position. They feared the prince's wrath and didn't know what to do. The king had been a great king to them, and they didn't know how to tackle this problem. We've all eaten his money and we can't even repay him. I think we should do the bidding of the prince, as we have no other option. If only we had known. We could have joined Okoro to reject his money. One of the elders said. And where is Okoro today? Another asked. Since then, Okoro has been missing and no one has seen him, another added. Fear gripped the others. They have been bound by their throats to fulfill the prince's wish. The king knew immediately that this was Nwakanaya's handwork when the elders gathered together in the palace to inform him of their new decision. My son wants to dethrone me so he could become king, the king kept on saying, his heart filled with pain. Nwakanaya was that child you would choose to remain childless instead of having. Let him have the throne if that's what he wants, the king said, after he had been silent for a while. His heart was filled with grief as he cursed his son. Your child will not only take the throne from you, but will also be the one to kill you. Nwakanaya was unmoved by the words of his father. Against his father's wish, he became the king. The whole kingdom was silent. There was no celebration of any kind, as they all mourned their fate. Now that the evil prince was now king, they wondered what their lives would look like. True to their fears, things became worse. Nwakanaya was the most evil person anyone could ever come across in their entire life. His wickedness increased by the day. Whatever anyone had was what he wanted. He took people's wives forcefully, took their lands, and anyone who dared question him was killed immediately. His father could not bear what his son was doing. He developed an heart attack and died. The queen, his mother, could not even utter a word for fear of being hurt by him. Nwakanaya spared no one. He was a man doing whatever he wanted without stopping or allowing anyone guiding him. The soil of the land was soaked up with the tears of the people who had been maltreated by Nwakanaya. Everyone lived in fear and no one dared to speak a word for fear of disappearing. The gods of the land were greatly provoked by the actions of King Nwakanaya. Several years after King Nwakanaya had become king, he had several children, but no single male child. He kept on marrying and still nothing changed. Many years flew by and his worries became intense. He decided then to consult the gods to know what the problem could be. When the chief priest came to the palace, his face was filled with worry and sadness. He walked slowly, his eyes downcast, and it was clear that something was very wrong. My king, the chief priest began in a trembling voice. I have bad news, but I'm scared for my own life. Promise to spare me, and I will give you the message from the gods. The air in the room grew tense. for everyone in the kingdom knew how much the king was feared. The king sat silently, thinking deeply. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "Let me hear it," he said, his voice calm but filled with unspoken authority. The chief priest took a deep breath and continued, "My king, the soil of the land is against you. The rivers are speaking against you. Every single thing is against you. The blood in the soil is crying out for vengeance. Many years ago, you buried a pregnant woman alive and killed her husband. That woman had waited for that child for 8 long years. The gods had plans for that child, and you terminated the child's destiny when she had done nothing wrong to you. Her cries reached the gods, and they were enraged by your actions. The gods have decided to wipe you off without an heir. On that day, you not only killed her son, but you ended your seed on earth. It is a son for a son." The room fell into a heavy silence as the words of the chief priest sank in. The king's face turned pale and he felt a deep piercing pain in his heart. He was filled with great anger. "Lies!" he screamed, his voice echoing through the grand hall. "These are nothing but lies. I am Mwakanaya, a son greater than his father. Who are these gods that dare challenge me? I have fought with man and I have fought with spirits. I do not fear them." His eyes blazed with fury as he pointed an accusing finger at the chief priest. "Guards, tie this peddler of lies and throw him into the pit. Let him die with his falsehoods." The guards quickly moved to seize the chief priest, who fell to his knees, pleading desperately for his life. "My king, please, you promised to spare me. I speak the truth, only the truth. Spare my life, I beg of you." His voice was filled with fear and desperation, but the king's heart was hardened. The king's mind was already made up. He could not tolerate what he perceived as disrespect and false accusations. His anger only grew as he shouted, hurling curses at the gods he no longer believed in. "I will not be swayed by these ridiculous tales. I am the ruler of Idumo and I bow to no one, not even the gods." As the guards dragged the chief priest away, his cries for mercy echoed through the palace. The people watched in horror, unable to believe what they were seeing. As days passed, the king's sadness deepened, casting a shadow over the once vibrant palace. Each day felt heavier than the last, and the weight of his troubles seemed almost unbearable. One quiet afternoon, while the king was lost in his gloomy thoughts, his personal servant approached him with a sense of urgency. "My king," the servant greeted with a respectful bow. "I think I have a solution for you." The king's attention was immediately piqued. His heart, heavy with sorrow and desperation, leaped at the possibility of a solution. "Speak," he commanded, his voice tinged with hope. He was willing to try anything that might resolve his problem and bring back peace to his life. The servant, sensing the king's eagerness, began to share his idea. He told the king about a certain family in a nearby kingdom, a family blessed with the rare gift of bearing male children. "My king," the servant explained, "there is hardly a woman in that family who has given birth to more than one female child. They are known far and wide for this unique blessing. I believe this could be your final bus stop, the answers to your prayers." The king's interest grew, his eyes lighting up with a glimmer of hope. This news could be the end of his long and weary search for a solution to his troubles. Without wasting a moment, he summoned the elders and his most loyal guards. He instructed them to prepare lavish gifts and set out to this nearby kingdom to arrange a marriage with a woman from the blessed family. In due time, the elders and guards returned with good news. The king had successfully arranged a marriage with a beautiful woman named Ife. She was renowned for her beauty and hailed from the very family the servant had spoken of. The king's heart swelled with happiness as he welcomed Ife into his palace. She was not only the most beautiful of all his wives, but also the first woman he had legally married. His other wives had been taken by force, either snatched from their husbands or taken against their family's will. Not long after she got married to the king, she became pregnant. The king was wild with joy. He laughed and mocked the gods who had said he would never have a male child. "I told you all, the gods are liars," the king said. He threw a big feast of celebration. All through the days Queen Ife was pregnant, the king pampered her like an egg. The day Queen Ife went into labor, something very strange and unsettling happened in the kingdom of Idumo. It was still afternoon, but suddenly the sky grew dark as night. Thick clouds covered the sun and a great storm began to brew. Lightning flashed across the sky, followed by thunder so loud that it seemed to shake the very earth. The people of Idumo had never seen such storm before, and they were filled with fear. They ran into their homes, praying to the gods to protect them from whatever danger was coming. Amidst this chaos, Queen Ife groaned in pain as she struggled to bring her child into the world. The midwife, who was there to help her, worked frantically, trying to comfort the queen and guide the birth. As the queen's cry grew, the storm outside seemed to grow even fiercer. The darkness and the storm were ominous signs, and everyone wondered what terrible thing might be happening. Finally, the moment came and the midwife's eyes widened in shock as she saw not only one but two babies. Twins? In Idumo, twins were considered an abomination, a sign of great misfortune. The midwife trembled as she realized the gravity of the situation. "Twin girls?" the king exclaimed when the news reached him. He cried out in pain and despair. "Girls!" he exclaimed, his voice filled with anguish. For the first time, the people saw their king in a deeply emotional state. Tears streamed down his face as he called out to the gods, questioning why they had forsaken him. The king believed that twins were evil children, and he felt cursed by the gods who had given him not just one but two daughters again. In his rage and sorrow, the king made a terrible decision. "Throw them into the river in the forest," he ordered. "She is an evil woman, and I cannot allow this evil to remain in my kingdom." His voice was cold and final, leaving no room for mercy. The queen, still weak from childbirth, was dragged to the river along with her newborn daughters. She pleaded for her life and the lives of her new babies, but her cries fell on deaf ears. The king's heart had turned to stone, and he was determined to rid his kingdom of what he perceived as a curse. As they were thrown into the river, the queen struggled desperately to save her children. She held onto them tightly, fighting against the strong currents, but the river was merciless. The waves swept over them, and despite all her efforts, the queen and one of the twin daughters were drowned in the raging waters. Immediately after the twins and their mother were thrown into the river, The darkness that had covered the kingdom of Idumo began to dissipate. The storm clouds parted, and the sun once again shone brightly in the sky. The people of Idumo were baffled by the strange events of the day, trying to understand the mystery that had unfolded before their eyes. As everyone struggled to comprehend what had happened, a miraculous sight appeared on the waters, where the remaining twin floated. A great light shone down upon the river, illuminating the spot where the baby was. Despite the strong current, the baby remained afloat, gently swept across the big river in the forest. An old fisherman named Akudo, who was out by the river, noticed the bright light. As he looked closer, he saw the baby coming towards him. A smile spread across his withered face, for he recognized the significance of this moment. He knew that the day had finally come, and he was overjoyed to be alive to witness the beginning and the end of the evil king Nwakanaya. Akudo was not just a fisherman. He was the former king of the Indim kingdom. His once thriving kingdom had been wiped out by Nwakanaya, and the few surviving villagers had fled for their lives. Akudo had lost everything during the invasion: his kingdom, his treasures, his people, and his beloved family. His wife and children had been brutally killed before him, and he had been forced to seek refuge in the forest, living a lonely and sorrowful life. The loss had turned him into a shadow of his former self, filled with grief and despair. During his time of mourning, the gods had spoken to Akudo, assuring him that vengeance would come. They had told him to watch for a great light in the river. "When you see this light," they said, "rejoice, for vengeance is near." Akudo had clung to this prophecy, waiting patiently for the day when justice would be served. He had not expected the light to come with a child, but as the baby drifted closer, she began to cry, and Akudo gently picked her up. The moment he held her in his arms, her face shone so brightly that he could hardly look at her. This was no ordinary child. She was a special gift from the gods themselves. Akudo understood that this baby had been sent to him for a reason: to care for her and protect her. He took the baby girl home and began to care for her with all the love and knowledge he possessed. His mother had been a very strong herbalist, renowned for her vast knowledge of herbs and roots. She had passed on her wisdom to Akudo, who now used this knowledge to tend to the baby. With carefully chosen herbs and leaves, he ensured that the child remained healthy and strong. On market days, Akudo would take his fresh fish to the market to trade for food and supplies. He was known in the market as a strange man because he never laughed or joked with anyone. His interactions were brief and straight to the point. He sold his goods and then returned home. People noticed that he brought the best fish to the market, but he always kept to himself, rarely associating with others. Akudo named the baby girl Ijele, a name given to a powerful deity in the land. As he watched her grow, he was continually amazed by the extraordinary powers she displayed. Ijele, true to her name, possessed incredible strength and abilities that seemed to come from the gods themselves. Akudo was never afraid to leave her alone in the forest because he knew she could protect herself. From a young age, Ijele demonstrated strength beyond that of ordinary humans. By the age of 12, she could tear down wild animals in seconds, displaying a power that left Akudo in awe. Despite not being a warrior himself and having no one to teach Ijele how to fight, Akudo saw that she had an innate ability to defend herself and others. She was truly a child of the gods, and her powers grew stronger as she aged. Akudo's life, once filled with sorrow and loneliness, now had a renewed purpose. He devoted himself to raising Ijele, teaching her everything he knew and ensuring she was well cared for. The bond between them grew strong, and they formed a small but happy family in their secluded home in the forest. Meanwhile, the people of Idumo were in big trouble. Things had gotten so bad that nothing seemed to be working anymore. Life became so miserable for the people. Their once fertile soil refusing to bring in harvests, and the people have to go to a nearby kingdom to farm and buy food. Worst still was the war that had befallen the land again. An unknown kingdom would invade the village, killing and taking away the possessions of the people. These soldiers were unidentifiable, and they terrorized the kingdom of Idumo greatly. Fear gripped everyone in the land as they woke up each morning to witness scenes of massive slaughter. The villagers were filled with dread, their cries echoing through the streets as they begged the king for help. But King Onwakanaya seemed indifferent to their suffering, doing nothing to address the terror that had befallen his kingdom. King Onwakanaya had become a very bitter and angry man. He was tormented by the fact that he had no heir, and by the realization that the kingdom he had forcefully taken from his father was now crumbling before his own eyes. The once proud and powerful king was now plagued by the silence of the gods, feeling the weight of their curse upon him. It seemed that the gods had abandoned him, leaving him to face the consequences of his own actions. Despite this, Mwakanaya's wickedness remained unchanged. His heart, hardened by the years of cruelty, showed no signs of softening. The elders of the kingdom, desperate for a solution, advised him to travel to a faraway land to seek answers and perhaps appease the gods. They hoped that a pilgrimage might lead to the gods' forgiveness and bring an end to their suffering. But Nwakanaya refused to listen. His pride and stubbornness prevented him from taking the elders' advice. He dismissed their words, calling the gods liars and mocking their supposed power. The gods are nothing but liars, he would shout, refusing to believe that they could have any real influence over his fate. The elders, unable to bear the suffering and pain any longer, decided to seek a solution from a faraway land themselves. Desperation drove them to travel across the wide forest and vast rivers in search of a very powerful witch doctor. This witch doctor was renowned for his immense power and wisdom, and they believed he might hold the key to saving their kingdom. After a long and arduous journey, the elders finally reached the witch's doctor's remote dwelling. They explained the dire situation in Idumo, hoping he could provide a solution. The witch doctor listened carefully, his eyes reflecting deep concern. The evil in the land of Idumo has caused the gods to turn their backs on you, he said gravely. A bad seed was left to germinate, and now that bad seed has become your terror. The elders exchanged worried glances. The witch doctor's words were heavy with truth. The only way to restore peace to your land, he continued, is for King Onwakanaya to be dethroned and killed. Only then will the land have peace. Fear gripped the elders. They knew Onwakanaya was a formidable warrior, a man who fought like the gods themselves and had never been defeated. Approaching him was like asking for death. Their hearts were heavy with dread as they considered the witch doctor's words. Desperate for another solution, they asked the witch doctor if there was any other way to save their kingdom. But the witch doctor shook his head. This is the only way, he repeated. But there is good news. The elders leaned in, eager for any glimmer of hope. In the forest of Ikoko lies the answer to your problem. A powerful girl of 17 with great gifts and power from the gods. She has been prepared by the gods themselves to bring down Nwakanaya and save the kingdom. She is his nemesis. With this revelation, the elders felt a spark of hope. Following the witch doctor's direction, they set out immediately for the Ikoko forest. There, they met Akudo, who was living a solitary life in the forest. The men explained their mission to Akudo, and his eyes lit up with joy. He had waited for this day all his life, and the long-awaited day had finally come. He couldn't wait to see the end of Nwakanaya's tyranny, to see him on his knees begging for his own life. For 3 days, the elders and Akudo camped in the forest, appeasing the gods and seeking for their blessings. They prayed fervently, offering sacrifices and asking for strength and protection for the task ahead. After the 3rd day, they felt a renewed sense of purpose and set out on their journey back to Idumo with Ijele by their side. As they approached the village, a loud shout erupted from the people. The villagers gathered, their faces filled with hope and anticipation as the elders shared the good news. Ijele, the powerful girl foretold by the witch doctor, had come to save them. For the first time in a long while, the people of Idumo felt a glimmer of hope. They had lived under the tyrant rule of Nwakanaya for far too long, and now there was finally a chance for freedom. The entire village celebrated Ijele's arrival, lifting her up and singing songs of hope and liberation. They believed that with her great gifts and divine power, Ijele would bring an end to their suffering and restore peace to their beloved land. As the shout of joy intensified, the king became troubled and sent out his guards to the village to know what was happening. The guards came back and informed the king that the people were gathered in the village square, celebrating his end. The king was furious. How dare they? He took his sword and mounted on his horse, along with his men. He was going to remind the people today that he was still Nwakanaya. But as King Nwakanaya approached the village square, a radiant figure stood in his way. It was Ijele, her face shining so brightly that he could hardly look at her. The brilliance of her presence was like a beacon of hope for the villagers who watched in awe and anticipation. Nwakanaya laughed, a bitter and mocking sound. "Is this what you came against me with? This little girl," he sneered. "You all dare turn against me. Today, I will teach you a lesson you would never forget in a hurry." With a swift move, he drew his sword, ready to strike Ijele down. But before his sword could reach her, it mysteriously fell from his grasp and clattered to the ground. Fear gripped him immediately as he realized something was terribly wrong. Summoning all his courage, Nwakanaya launched himself at Ijele, determined to defeat her. They began to fight with their fists. The king using all his might and skills, but Ijele was undefeatable. She moved with the grace and power of a deity, effortlessly countering his every attack. No matter how hard he fought, he couldn't land a single blow on her. As the battle raged on, Nwakanaya's fear grew. He could see that he was no match for Ijele. He had never seen such one fighting with great prowess before. Desperate, he tried to escape for his life, but before he could flee, she struck him down with a bolt of thunder. The villagers watched in horror as their once mighty king fell to the ground, begging for his life. "How the mighty have fallen," they exclaimed, unable to believe their eyes. Nwakanaya was a warrior who had fought in battles for years, but he had never met anyone as powerful as Ijele, who stood before him. "Who are you?" he stuttered, trying to see if he could find answers. The young girl looked at him. "I am Ijele, your daughter, the surviving twin of Queen Ife, the one you threw into the river." The king looked up in shock. "What? My own child?" Something struck in his mind. The last words his father had said to him. Those words were said to him when he tried to take the throne forcefully from his father. "Your child will not only take your throne, but will be the one to kill you." Tears streamed down his eyes. Truly, everyone lives to pay for their evil actions. Was this it for him? His life flashed before his eyes as he reflected over all the pains he had caused people in his lifetime. He let out a loud cry. Seeing their leader's defeat, Nwakanaya's men attempted to run, but Ijele was swift and relentless. With the same divine power, she struck them down and they all died immediately. The village square was filled with the silence of disbelief and the realization that the tyrant's reign had finally come to an end. With a determined look, Ijele took out a sword and with a single swift motion cut off the head of King Nwakanaya. The villagers erupted in celebration, their joy uncontainable. They lifted Ijele onto their shoulders, parading her around the entire kingdom. It was a day of immense joy and relief, and the entire kingdom rejoiced, knowing that peace had been restored. After the celebration, the people of Idumo gathered together to crown Ijele as their new king. They saw that she was endowed with great gifts from the gods and believed she was the one who could return their kingdom to its former glory. Her strength, wisdom, and kindness were exactly what the kingdom needed. As she took her place as a new ruler, Ijele promised to lead with justice and compassion. The people of Idumo felt a renewed sense of hope and unity under her leadership. Everything went back to normal. Their crops began to grow bountifully. With Ijele as their king, they looked forward to a future filled with peace, prosperity, and happiness. Hi besties! Thank you so much for watching this exciting and amazing story, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. I would like you to share your lessons in the comment section so that every other person can learn from it. If you are yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, please do not hesitate to subscribe. Kindly hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell so that you get notified whenever we post new stories. Right now, I'll have to go and see you in our next story. Bye!